So today I'm going to tackle our front entry. Now traditionally I put some green garland up the sides of the white balustrade and a couple of trees or some nutcrackers or something on each side of the front door. I also love to hang a wreath on our fly screen door, so that as people enter up they get a very warm festive welcome. And I think that I'll probably start with that same plan. It does tend to evolve. I've got a couple of things that I can use on the balustrade in the sort of the sections that I've got. I've got some big silver outdoor bows that are already pre-made, and I've also got some red outdoor ribbon that I could make some bows with myself. So I'm not quite sure which way I'm going to go with that, but I hope you enjoy the journey as we make our front entry a very warm, fun and festive welcome to everybody that visits us this Christmas. Now I've had this garland for quite a while and it's gone up outside probably for about, well, I'm going to say about 3 years now. So it's not its best, but by the time I put pretty little fairy lights in it and add a bit of DecoMesh and a few other baubles and a bit of ribbon, it is just fine for its purpose here on the front steps. Definitely adds that little bit of Christmas. So now I've got the garland on, I'm going to add the fairy lights. I'll start by plugging it in to the power and then I'll bring it down to the front of the garland and back up again. I normally get a couple of runs up and down the garland and that just gives it a beautiful magical look when people are coming in the evening, and I love putting it on every night. It looks so pretty. A little tip, always make sure that you have your lights turned on when you're putting them in place. One, it makes sure that your lights are working before you start spending the time putting them all into the garland or the tree or wherever you're using them. But it also makes sure that you get a more even distribution. This is pretty easy in the garland because I'm just going to go up and back, and so I know sort of that it's going to be fairly well distributed. But I do suggest that you have them plugged in when you're putting them in place. So once I've gone up and down a few times, I'll now use the needle pines of the garland to sort of push them back in place and hide all the cords. I separate out all the needle pines to give it as much fullness as I can. And I just secure it to the balustrade using the needle pines themselves. I'll go back in on the main areas and add a cable tie just for that extra little bit of security. But I find that the pine needles themselves just wrapped around enough to keep it there most of the time. So the garland's on and the light's on, and now I'm going to decorate it. I'm just going to use 3 things to keep it really simple. I'm going to use some lime green DecoMesh. That will just form a bit of a basis and cover up quite a bit of this tired looking garland. Then I'm going to layer on top of that this red bauble garland that I've got. It's pre-lit, it's got a sort of a very fine seed light going through it. You won't be able to see that very much, but that density of baubles is going to look pretty cute, I think, on top of the lime green DecoMesh. Now I have in the past just used baubles inside it, so if you can't get bauble garland, then consider sort of making clusters of baubles and putting them in groups of 3 or 5 or 7, and just make a row of baubles in different sizes. And then I'm going to finish it off with a big bow. I've got 8 of these that I've made. I bought a big 50-metre roll of outdoor red velvet ribbon from Amazon, and I've made 8 of these, and they will go in obviously 4 different spots up the garland. So let's go and see how that all comes together. I'm just going to go in first and use the cable ties, or the needle ties I should say, that I've used to put the DecoMesh on with. I'm going to undo those and just use the baubles with that to hold those in place. I think I might need to use a few more of the needle pines as well to really pull them back in, because I want them to look kind of combined with the garland. I don't want them to be sort of sitting out from it. So a little bit of manoeuvring with the needle pines, and I think that will kind of pull them all back in and making it nice and tight. So the garland's all done. I'm pretty happy with the way it's turned out. You'll see a little bit later why I chose to incorporate the lime green, because I've got a touch of lime green going up on the front door as well with my wreath and my trees. But for now, I'm going to add these big outdoor bows that I've made. I've got 4 for each side, and I'll have them evenly spaced up the balustrade. And that will finish off all of the balustrade area. So with these bows, I've just made them with a cable tie in the middle and used a pipe cleaner at the back, and I will attach those in quite tightly so that again it all sort of looks like it's part of the same garland and not separate from it. So there we are, the balustrades are all done. I really like the way they've come out. They look very, very festive. There's nothing quite like red baubles and bows that tells you that Christmas is here. So on each side of my front door I've got one of these fiberglass urns. And I like the way that the sort of the white gloss jumps off the sort of the dark brick and the grey of the tiles. I often have something in these, and I've actually made some faux topiary trees that I normally have in them, but it's fun to swap them out for different occasions. And this year I bought a couple of slim Christmas trees, and I'm going to decorate those up and put them in the pots. Now, to make sure that they didn't sort of tip over in the wind, I've actually prepared a couple of these black plastic plant pots with some pretty heavy pebbles inside them, some pretty substantial kind of rocks in there. Then I've used the foam filler that you can get from Bunnings or any hardware shop, and I filled in around all the pebbles and then filled it to about sort of 3/4 of the way, and as it dries it expands. So now it's made a sort of a really good base, and I'll put the pole of the Christmas tree straight through the middle, and that should hold it. I'll also build in around the sides of it, because there is a bit of room around it once it's in the urn, with some other pebbles as well, just to finish it off and give it that extra bit of security once it's in place. I'm going to keep the decorations for the trees on each side of the door pretty simple, but they'll be very striking. I'm going to use some DecoMesh at the base. I've got some red and some lime green. I'm also going to use some of the velvet outdoor ribbon that I made the bows out of, and also some of this beautiful harlequin ribbon. It's got that stunning lime green and a bit of emerald green, and the red, of course, that'll really pop. I've got some clusters of baubles, both in the emerald green and in the red, and then I've got some picks here which have the red and the lime green together. So the last piece for my front entry area is obviously the wreath that I've made for the front door. I've used some of the Harlequin ribbon that I used on the trees. I've used some of the picks that I used on the trees as well. And the other thing I've started to do is incorporate a few things that you'll find when you first walk into the house. So one of the things is these elves, which are in the burgundy and the green. I've got a couple of those as you come into the front entry. I've also used this poinsettia, 2 of those. Again, you'll find them around the mirror when you first walk in. So I like everything to be coordinated, but not so matchy-matchy that it doesn't have its own personality here in the front entry. I think the lime green with the red is really making this area pop, and I haven't used lime green anywhere else in the living room, but I have used a lot of red and burgundy. So now I'll just get everything in its place and I'll give you a final look of how it's all come together. Be sure that you connect with us because we'd love to share with you all the fun that we have when we are creating, decorating and celebrating this most wonderful time of the year.